You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
So let's welcome my co-host, mentor, and friend. Bill, how's the smelt running up there, eh?
Today it's running great. We've got major rainstorms, so it's been wonderful. So I'm going to have to get out halfway through this podcast and go grab some for us if you want.
Yeah, and you can fry them right there on the dock. You just eat them with their heads and everything. These little smelt fish. You know, I've done it. I've been there. I've seen it.
It's all about that value perception thing that you were talking about, right?
There's a lot of Pabst going on. I was amazed by that, though. They have little deep fryers out on the dock. I don't remember how they power them. It must be natural gas or something. And they have the oil ready, and they pull these little fish called smelt right out of the Lake Michigan, right into the pot. They're drunker than hell, and there's like 100 people on the dock doing this.
And
they're frying them. No, the smelt aren't drunk. They could be. It's unknown, but... they eat them right there. It's disturbing. But today we're talking about price, specifically how to double it. If that is, imagine that. Most people seeing this are going to be like, you're nuts. And they might be right. But we've done this over and over again for clients. And what we're really talking about is how the market perceives your value, the perception of value. And what's funny to me, we were just talking about how hard it is to define the word value. And I think it's because there isn't really a definition. There's no objective, definition of it.
Well, I still think it's the customers and the marketplace, like you talked about, Pete. The customers in the marketplace are going to define the value perception. They have to, because they're the ones that decide, when I'm paying for something, if I'm perceiving that I'm getting a good deal, or that I'm getting more than I pay for, then my value perception is running really, really high. And so I don't think that companies in their own sake can set that value. They could try, but I think they need the customers in the marketplace to be involved in that somehow.
Well, I think that I think it means that it's so individualized how value is perceived.
Yes.
Like one of the things I think about is I've seen this used, and I don't remember the book, but it was talking about this very idea. And it talks about Bic pens, those little plastic pens that are like 13 cents. Actually, someone looked that up right before the program to see what they are going for these days. So and then there's these Montblanc pens. Montblanc, right? And that could be $650 if it's not the jewel encrusted one. But think about this. So that's a 5,000x increase in price for something that does exactly the same thing. Now you might say, well, this one's smoother, or this one has a nicer case. Is it 5,000x nicer? Or is there something going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the classic premium price strategy, where the price itself enhances the value, the perception of value, right?
Wouldn't it be fun to know what the raw costs are of the Bic versus the Montblanc, so that you could just see the exponential increase for the second one? That'd be fun.
Well, the costs are definitely going to be higher. I mean, in an ideal world, your costs are objective. There's always going to be objective costs, but the perception of value is actually subjective. And so, I think the pen analogy illustrates that it's how people perceive your offering, brand, whatever you want to call it. I say offering.
Yeah.
It dictates almost directly how much they'll pay. Okay? I mean, do we agree on that?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
If that's true and value is individualized in a myriad, gazillion different ways of how people perceive value according to their own. Somebody who just got hit by a car, and a guy runs up and he's like, I'm a doctor, a trauma surgeon. Can I help? The guy laying on the ground bleeding is not going to be like, well, how much?
Yeah.
But if the same guy didn't get hit by a car and he's sitting in the cafe and the guy runs up and says, I'm a doctor, he's going to be like, trying to eat. So I think it can vary even from moment to moment. Place, location has a big impact, right? How much will you pay for a bottle of water at the grocery store versus the ball game versus Coachella? I think it's up to $75 a bottle at Coachella now. That's what I'm just hearing, but I could be wrong. So think about all those things. So I'm going somewhere with this.
Good.
So there can't be any correct price. There can't be any. If perception directly drives, perception of value directly drives pricing, there's no right price. So think about companies that are like, they believe they have to track closely or below, especially the ones that really believe they have to be less than competitors. Like that's their whole strategy, is to be cheaper. The problem is it's like a race to the bottom. And once you're in that race, I think it's a sign you don't really understand how to enhance, and this is the sentence that it sounds complicated, enhance the value, the perception of value to customers. You probably don't know how to do it. So I'd like to talk about how to do it.
Part of that race to the bottom, as you say, some of that, I mean, that's such a really good point, but some of that is someone just being naive. But the other thing that could be with that is depends on where the organization or the product or service that they're selling is on the life cycle too. So like if it's in a really mature market, well, then you understand when they're throwing it away for hardly any price just to get rid of it. But if you're in the beginning stage or the second stage, or
like
you're kind of silly,
the emerging part of the life cycle or the growth life cycle. Again, I mean, I honestly don't even know how many variables, right? There's so many of them. But there's some things that I think every business can do once they get this. Well, the other funny thing is, like, how hard is it to state the definition of value? It's like I was thinking about that this morning, and I realized it's hard. It's because I think it's not uniform, but it's basically the value would be somebody sees they feel it's a better solution, or they perceive that it's going to deliver some, make them happy. I mean, value's funny because it can be something as simple as I laughed at it. That's providing value. Because one of the things that I'm always saying is try to provide value at every touch. When you're in your sales cycle, in your customer's life cycle, like every time they talk to you, they get some value from it. Well, people are like, well, how on earth are we going to do that?
I'll give you an example.
Lots of ways. Go ahead.
I had as you know, I had some major back surgery, actually coming up on a year right now, and and it's really interesting because I think I had a really, really good qualified back surgeon. I mean, he was a neurosurgeon. He was spectacular, but I have to tell you that his 2 PAs made all the difference in the world, because every time I came, they sat me down, they were able to explain things, they answered questions. I would call on the phone, they would take my call. I mean, they just went way above and beyond. And I also was looking at another surgeon at the time, and it was almost like, just get in here and get this done, and that's what we're going to do, versus this other one that truly went above and beyond. And, I mean, in the pain level, I mean, I was out of the hospital within a day, and they did, fusion and laminectomy, and they did a lot of great stuff, but it's that sometimes it's the staff is what I'm saying,
So so that's an example, I think. And I was mentioning before the podcast that there's this concept I have trouble articulating, and that kind of relates to it, where the first place where they're missing they're so wrapped up in their own little world, they're missing a really fundamental piece of how the patient values being comforted and comfortable, and is frightened, and it's scary. And by the way, it's super expensive. Why? Because there isn't relatively that many people who can fix your spine.
That's right.
I went down to the Ampco down here. They don't have a spine guy there. So I don't know. Must be tough. But so they're missing like just such it's right in front of their face, isn't it? And so that's, and so as usual, mea culpa, we do this too. I mean, we're in this business of helping companies figure this out, and then we also do it ourselves because we're human. I swear if I wash my car, it drives better.
I think it does.
I think it does. It feels like it, doesn't it?
Especially your car. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know.
Because that's what everybody's staring at it, pointing at it, going, "Oh, look at that car," So yeah,
Well, they hear me coming like 6 blocks away too, which is I can't
yeah,
sneak up on anyone. It's terrible.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the
But
other, speaking of cars, so gasoline, right? Like things drive pricing that have nothing really to do. Like, so we're talking about, so it's generally accepted when there's less supply, there's more demand, so the price will go up because there's more demand. Now, if costs stay the same, there's no magical mechanism, that makes the price automatically go up.
right,
It's a human
right.
being thing. You're willing to pay more for something if you think it's scarce. And I would put McLarens up there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want one, but they're kind of scarce,
yeah.
a little pricey. Actually, I read that I think it's one of the McLarens. It's about 280,000 a year for maintenance,
Oh wow,
cost of ownership.
jeez.
So I have three of
But
those.
you're right with regard to being scarce, or I guess another way to look at that is if your product or service or you are in demand, it's like, of course, there's got to be value there too. So I think that's really that's
So
important.
what are things that So I think that hopefully we've established this idea. So I'm speaking to all the companies out there that you say, hey, double our price. My God, this guy's nuts. Doesn't know a thing about our
Or
business. What is
no,
he
no, what
talking
they're
about?
thinking,
These
no,
friggin'
Pete, they're thinking,
consultants. They
Pete,
don't
they're
know.
not thinking that. They're thinking if he can do that, then that guy is really valuable. So
Well,
that's good.
the thing is, we can.
Yeah,
It's difficult. It takes time. You have to
yeah,
do a lot of things. A lot of times, clients aren't willing to do the things.
right.
Great. Another example: the world of professional graphic design, corporate communications, graphic
Hmm.
design, visual aesthetic. Over the last 20 years or so, the value of that, what you can charge for that service, has just dropped out of the bottom of the market.
Yeah,
Well, part of it is everybody and their brother now with technology can make some sort of thing. Now, is it good? Is it not? We're getting into a subjective area. Most people really don't understand this stuff, so they buy it. It's all about the price, all about the price,
yeah,
right? Go to
yeah,
Fiverr, get that website done for 25 bucks.
yeah.
Now, it's the funniest part about that is aesthetics, production value directly impact the perception of value. So, um, if you get two pieces of junk mail in the mail, and one's from AT&T and
Yeah.
one's from Joe's Taxidermy, right? They're both paper with ink on them. You can tell which one is like a real company, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or Joe's meat out of the back of my truck company. You can tell. You don't have to be super media savvy, and that's what production value is about. Now, you don't have to go nuts either, but looking sharp, clean, professional, the right language, right? Instead of saying quote, say estimate. Uh,
Right.
you know, don't quote everything. If you're in a quoting culture or a quoting
Uh,
industry,
exactly.
they think they can't, well, we have to do it because that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Do they have
And
to
we've
do it,
all
Bill?
been, yeah, we've all been subject
They
to
don't
that
have to.
too, where somebody, oh, can you give us a proposal or can you do that? And then you go through all this work and then, you find out they had, 15 other
Seven
people that they were,
dollars.
yeah, it's like ridiculous. So that's,
They had 15 other people and their budget was $7. Um,
yeah, yeah.
well, here's
But
the
I
thing.
think,
So that's within your power, though, right? I mean, you
right,
can create scarcity on your own
yeah,
by basically saying no.
yes,
So if you're in a service business, we work primarily with B2B service companies. We work with others too, but that's our primary thing. Saying no can actually increase the value of how you're perceived.
exactly.
And
I think a couple of things like I'd mentioned before is really important, and I think some of the viewers, and then maybe we can get into some examples of how you can do this because I think there's lots of examples. But in my opinion, one like we talked about early on, I think the customer in the marketplace kind of helps define that value. So if you're not out there finding out what they want or what's important to them, and then Pete, you said this earlier, it's very personalized. So it's like, even though somebody might find something that's unique that you offer, maybe another customer finds something else. I mean, so you better find out what those things are. And then another thing that I help our clients with, which I think is really important, is, do you understand that customer journey? Like, what are they going through, the various steps? And then along those ways, like, where do you intervene and where can you help them? And do you truly understand that customer journey? Because a lot of people don't. You talked about it. They're more transaction oriented, where, oh, let's just sell this or let's just sell that. And I don't think that that's effective, So,
well, I think a sales pitch, again, you value at every touch, right? So the customers, especially B2B customers these days, their journey looked completely different than it did even 5 years ago. So what they're out there, they're seeking their own information. They're probably not going to call you until they've already almost decided, right? So what are you putting out there into the world in terms of information? And a sales pitch doesn't have any value. I thought it'd be fun to read a few in-mails, okay?
Okay.
So because this is very relevant to this. So AJS, B2B lead gen guru, USA, any sector, that would be his title. Reliable option for your sales pipeline, 4 exclamation points. We, okay, we're going to talk about them now apparently, we are premier player in U.S. lead generation with access to paid tools, links, and databases. May we help you in lead generation? Please find attached samples of our lead generation work with the following features: titles, CEOs, with emails. We could try, test, and make the payments. Please advise if interested.
I'm sold. I'm ready.
I'm in. Wow. No value, zero value. Let's see what Rosie has to say. Hey, I'm reaching out to establish connect and introduce our firm. Okay, I'm going to skip the ones that apparently don't really speak English.
That have bad grammar.
Yeah, if you're not speaking English. I found one that was said that, are we interested in them? They're a B2B company that delivers leads. And so they wanted to know if Monfre ACOT Marketing Communications wanted to engage them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I said, you're the worst B2B lead thingy in the world, because that company, changed its name in 2003 and actually doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So you're horrible, go away. But anyway, too many people get this wrong. A sales pitch doesn't have any value. Okay, so one way you can improve the way that people perceive you is look at how you sell, right?
Right.
Do customer research so that you understand their journey and their thought process and how they value things on a granular level. And you know what? It's not going to be just one time you're going to survey. You're going to do it over time, over and over again as things change. The better you understand that and the way that they assign value, the more you can, I hate to use this word, but you manipulate the value of perception. Now, there's a check and balance here. We didn't talk about this part. So what we're not saying is just make up a bunch of claims.
No, yeah.
Because if you enhance if that Montblanc pen didn't deliver, there wouldn't be a Montblanc company, right? You got to deliver, right, to that value.
You are so right. Even with regard to the sales process, which someday we really need to have one of our podcasts focus on that. But even understanding the person or the people that you're meeting with, they all have probably different personalities. They're probably all different on the Myers-Briggs. They're probably all have a different DISC profile. But if you understand that, maybe you can do a better job of selling to them as well. But we always go, when I say we, the proverbial we go in thinking that everybody's the same and here's what we're going to do and we're going to pitch. And, you've taught me this and this has worked well for me for many years. You don't go in and pitch anything. You go in and listen. And what are those pain points? What's going on? Understand their business. And then maybe you can offer a solution to really help them out.
Well, and pitching, this being from the, I guess the ad industry business, back in the day, we did pitch work, but we might have been pitching to Kimberly Clark, where the upside was so extreme that there was enough money there but if you really look at it, looking backwards, it still doesn't make sense, because until you've had significant amount of time doing discovery and learning about the specifics of that company, you might know everything there is to know about the industry. You might have worked with a million companies just like them before, but you still need to know the details of that company. If you're pitching something, essentially you're making recommendations either without knowing anything, or you've just invested hours upon hours of time researching a client, but not talking to them necessarily, and then telling them what the answer is right out of the gate, right? And that still goes on today. And I think the biggest danger there is you might pitch the wrong thing, and then they love it. Because then you get the deal, right? And then you start doing discovery, and you're like, holy crap, this idea is a disaster. And the CEO's like, this is it, man. You're like, oh, let's never do this again. RFPs. You love RFPs, don't you?
Oh, I absolutely do.
You just save them
they go right into my junk mail and my email, or I just, like you talked about that hill going downhill. I think it's the same thing. I think let's see what we can do to reduce everything that somebody offers to the exact minimal, and let's base it on price. I mean, it's as dumb a concept as I've ever seen. Now I know some people in the construction industry have something called an RFQ, where you go through a qualifications process. That might be a little bit more
that's
reasonable,
more acceptable, I think,
but it still eventually comes down to the price eventually. So it's like, so what? You added an extra process. It's like, I don't know.
They've also, so let's talk about this for just a few minutes, because there's so many companies out there that are involved in what I call quoting culture or RFP culture, where they really believe in their minds that they have to do it this way because that's how the industry does it. And if I told them that, they'd be like, get out of here, Mr. Consultant Big Mouth. You don't know nothing about our business. Well, actually, I've worked with about 100 companies just like yours that thought they were stuck in that they had to do things this way. And I got news for you. You don't have to do anything. It's your business. You can structure it the way you want. There's also ways to disrupt that process. But, if you're in that, if primarily you're getting business through RFPs or putting bids in on things or doing quotes, the only thing they're evaluating you on is your price. And guess what? The price can't be low enough. The price can't be low enough.
And you know what? Worse, you're allowing them to set what the parameters are. And it's like, hey, wait, maybe you got a better solution. It's like, you're not even listening to what I could offer you.
That's like, hey, doc, I'm going to go see my neurosurgeon. I got this terrible friggin' headache. You got to help me. I need you to chop my leg off.
Yeah.
And the doc's like, sure. Well, wait, how much is it going to be? So, yeah, they self-diagnosed in detail. Boy, those RFPs, like, stupid idea number 1, 2, 3, stupid idea number 10, and it's like, so they have these question and answer sessions sometimes, and sometimes you can kind of deal with that. But most of the time, look, it's a 10-to-1 ratio that you may or may not win. You're going to put in hundreds and hundreds of hours, and the person who helped them write the RFP is probably going to get that job. And you're just serving a purpose. We got to get 3 bids. We got to, it's possible. I just want to, we don't have enough time to talk about it, but you can absolutely break out of that. And if anybody wants to break out of that, just reach out. We're happy to talk more about it. But what they're trying to do is even the playing field, right? And you don't want that. You don't want that.
And I was gonna say, companies, in my opinion, are ridiculous to even offer the RFPs because, there are so many ways to scam the system. Okay, let's come in with the lowest price where it's almost outrageous, and then what do? Let's do a change order. Let's do a change order. I didn't know you wanted I didn't know you wanted metal with that. Oh, I didn't know you wanted any service. You could add on all day long. It's like, how dumb.
Oh wait, you need an engine for that car?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. I think when it comes to that, there's so many ways that you can manipulate that process, and I think really, for us, when we stopped doing this 20 years ago. I think for us, it was just really the amount of time put in to the amount of what we got out of it, and then really starting to see how the game was kind of rigged but that it, and I mentioned earlier, if you think about, so the prospect wants to even the playing field, right? So that they can make a decision. Well, if the playing field's even and everything's the same, the only thing there is to talk about now is price. So really all you're doing is just competing on price, even though it might say that we're not going to choose the lowest bid. Sometimes they do that, but still it dictates even a range, right? It's not talking about the value of the solution. They might not even have the solution, right? And so we just honestly would just toss them in the trash. And I recommend you do the same thing. And, always love showing companies how they can get away from that. But just because your industry does it doesn't mean that you have to. I think that's one of the first things. But if you start, and I think most companies underestimate their true value. I mentioned earlier in the podcast about you have to deliver the goods. I don't think that's a huge problem for a lot of companies. I actually think that they have trouble communicating their true greatness and value to the market. It's not that the value is not there. It's just that it's really sometimes difficult to communicate.
Right. And by the way, sometimes it's the little things too. So like you might have one portion coming from the company, but maybe different salespeople do different things, and the value gets goofy or it gets confusing too. So that's really important too, to be consistent.
Being consistent can enhance the perception of value.
Absolutely.
Like McDonald's, I hate to use them as an example. Ray Kroc's whole deal was consistency. I think it was even above quality of food. I think we can safely say now that was true. But that consistency, when McDonald's was really in its heyday and when that whole industry was starting out, there was a reason they led, right? Because they knew they weren't in the hamburger business. They understood the value of the experience of eating out with your family, right? Interesting. Totally different take. And I saw a documentary and people just laughed at Ray.
Yeah.
But he owned all of the land under the stores. That's another thing. So, what's the value prop?
It's I have a couple of stories to share, but let me at least share one right off the bat. Okay. So we had one B2B service company, and when customers would come in, they always had hot chocolate chip cookies in their lobby. I mean, I'm serious. You'd walk in and it just smelled awesome, and they would just be platters, and they just constantly would fill them up. And, so now fast forward to like a year later, we did a customer study for them. And we found out what was the number one thing that people thought of when they thought of this organization. It was the chocolate chip cookies. But guess what they gave up? They got new carpeting. They redesigned their lobby, and they said, "Oh, we can't have any more food in the lobby." So I mean, it's so personalized. It's so unique that. But I just got such a chuckle out of that. It's like the chocolate chip cookies actually differentiated them from everybody else, and they were like a lot of different people. So. It's hilarious,
So I think people that want to say, hey, we do want to enhance our value, how do we do it? I mean, let's say we're not going to, we've talked about a lot of different ideas, but I think the one thing that every B2B company can do to provide value at every touch is to share their knowledge. Okay. Yeah. We put a lot of effort into this program. This is our 11th month of doing it every Thursday. And we put a lot of effort into this because we're trying to provide value. Like if we just got up here and did a half-hour sales pitch, would anybody be watching it all?
Our family.
No, our family. Nah, I don't even think my mom would tolerate that. But we're trying to share our knowledge, and if you think about it, all of our clients have enormous, very specialized knowledge in their heads. It happens to be the most important, the thing that the customer wants the most. And then some people will say, "Well, we're not giving that away."
Right.
Yeah, you are. You're going to give it away all the time, every time. Or maybe you meet somebody and instead of talking about yourself, you focus on them, okay? You just delivered value. Or you sent a message that said, "Hey, why don't you check out this webinar? I think you'll get some value from it." That's not a sales pitch, right? No. You want to share your knowledge. In fact, we have a webinar coming up. We'll put a link in the comments. It was a good segue. It's how to develop your message, right? How to get this across words and pictures. There's a method to it. We're just going to show you that method. But doing PR, production value, researching the customer experience and And that's what I think the cookie story is really about: customer experience. What's gonna give them that dopamine dump,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Even a nice thank you note, sending a thank you card every once in a while. And I know the handwritten cards are kind of becoming a thing of the past, but those mean a lot. And I'm going to
That's why
bring
you
something
should
out
do
to
it.
show the audience. So I think you designed our logo, I don't know how many years ago, probably 25, 30 years old, I should say, our brand. And, you gave me this frame. I mean, and even through different varieties and versions of this, we've always kept it. I've always kept this in my office, and on the back is your brand. So it's
A little
like,
Monfre
oh,
cot
wonderful.
sticker.
And this lasted 25 years, but it's those little things sometimes that goes a million miles. So I think that could be key. I've got we're in Milwaukee country, so we're Brewers people, and we usually have season tickets for the Brewers. And I have some clients in Chicago, and they're like huge Cub fans. And so when the Brewers play the Cubs, guess what? I'm looking to try to give those tickets away to the Cub clients down in Chicago, so that, because they're going to probably enjoy it more than I'm gonna.
Well, and that's a very literal way of bringing them value, and the best kind of value doesn't have a quid pro quo, right? So it's
exactly.
like, hey, I'm going to do this thing for you. Like, we have these networking events here in Austin, and I tell people, look, find one person and bring them value. Now, well, how do you do that? Well, it might be that you just listen to them, or it might be that you make an introduction, right?
Right.
But a sales pitch does not bring value. Talking about yourself doesn't bring value. So how can you use your knowledge and package it in small bites? Like, we've just been going on here for 31 minutes, precisely. And have we shared all of our knowledge on this topic? I mean, we're not even scratching the surface. Like, so if you're worried about giving it all away, trust me, you can't, right? But people really do learn from it. I get a lot of, I don't know if you've gotten any comments yet, but I do get regular comments about from people saying, hey, this thing is really matured. It's great. They're really impressed by it.
Yeah, the comments I get is it's a good thing that you've hooked up with Pete, because at least you got someone that knows what they're doing.
At least somebody does. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't really. We have more people here too, but it's not easy to do this. But if again, if it was all sales pitch, if it was a commercial, right? I don't think we'd still be doing it. And the funny thing about this program, and I've teased this before, and we just don't seem to get to it. We will get to it, but why are we doing this, right? Why? Because if you notice, I'm not even looking right now. Probably not very many people watching it live. People don't watch it live generally. That's not why we do it, right? Well, the reason we do it live is because it's very efficient. We get it done in one shot. There's no post-production, okay? LinkedIn's algorithm gives preference to live video. And then we take this, chop it up, and repost it and repost it. So they're seeing us consistently sharing lots and lots of knowledge over time, and every contact is value.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that manifests itself in we were 50% to goal this year in week 2 of January.
That's awesome.
And I attribute that to the podcast, because it's become sort of the main thing that we do. And so that's why I know it's driving it. Plus, people mention it. And so, and also, when I think I've had the worst, clumsiest episode, that's the ones people love the most. They just can't figure it out. But then over the long tail, which means the video is sitting there in the profile, it also goes to YouTube, and it's going to Spotify and iHeartRadio and iTunes and all that. They rack up views, hundreds and hundreds. And this video that we're making right now in the moment is going to last almost forever. So be careful what you say. That's how it works. That's why we're doing it. That's the strategy. It's not immediately obvious, right? Most clients at the 11-month mark, if they looked at how many live viewers we get, would kill this. I'm not killing it. Well, we're killing it in bringing in new business.
Yeah.
So we're not killing the podcast. We're going to keep doing it every Thursday, 11 o'clock, right here on LinkedIn, like I like to say. Any final thoughts? I mean, I think this is a topic we should revisit. I mean, it could be a webinar unto itself. How to enhance the perception of value.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add, that we can even talk about as a separate item is don't ever underestimate the power of your employees for also delivering that value, because you, like I said, you could do something maybe as a CEO or the marketing person, but somebody else could either help you or they could really hurt you with
Right.
if you don't pay attention and help train them along the way.
Right. They get a terrible experience with your phone system. Happens to me all
Yes.
the time. Or the person
Yes.
that answer it doesn't even know the most basic facts about the company. There's just a zillion ways to trip up. But if
Right.
you're not thinking in terms of perception being reality and how it impacts price elasticity, although I read an article today, is plasticity the same word as elasticity? You're the marketing professor.
I don't
I
know.
think plasticity is the wrong word in this
I would
article.
too. I like the
It's price
elasticity.
elasticity.
Yeah,
So it is a direct relationship, right? It's the difference.
definitely.
Why, I've been called old fashioned because I don't wear a t shirt on this program
Uh-oh.
and I shave for the program. And that makes me old fashioned because, I don't know. I don't get it. And I see the younger gurus out there in the videos, and I always get great value from them. And so it doesn't really matter how they look. But this is, we dress out of respect for the audience.
Yes.
That's what
Yes.
we're about here. Now, as soon as this goes off, I have to tell you, this jacket comes off and the t-shirt goes on. But what a great topic. I mean, I think that,
A lot of fun.
we'll revisit it again. I do think, we have this, we're going to touch on some of this stuff in the webinar, and there's a link in the comments, but we'll probably do a standalone webinar just we'll rattle off, I can think of at least a dozen ways that don't cost anything, really
Exactly.
additional, but
Yep.
that you just like reframe your language, for example.
Right.
I mean, so there's some very basic things. So I can't wait to share that with the audience. But good to see you, man. I think,
Thank you as well.
people learned hopefully about smelt. Am I saying it right, or is it schmelt?
No, it is smelt, but
It's smelt.
a lot of that's like you said on Lake Michigan. But you could go inland on some piers, and it could be trout, it could be it could be perch,
Really?
etc. And one last thing, talking about
Do they cook them
value.
right
Hey,
there? Like they're pulling a trout out and like cooking it
oh,
right there?
absolutely, or on the shore. I mean, or on the shore,
Wow.
with more of the inland lakes. But one of the things that let's talk about the difference of value based on where you live, geography. Okay, so
Sure.
like up here, perch, walleye, trout. Those are what we love for fish. Or usually we have a fish fry on Friday, which you know about. But it's like my parents and my siblings have lived in Houston for over 45 years. They go out for catfish, and I can't. Oh, like up here, if somebody said we're going to get catfish, we'd make fun of them. Versus down there, it's like catfish is kind of, isn't that
I
though?
love catfish.
I was just going to say. So it just depends on where you are and the value.
It's a southern thing. Well, even I think I've seen this many places before. Definitely not taking credit for this analogy, but the price of water, bottled
Yes.
water. If you
Yeah.
buy it at the grocery store versus you buy it at the convenience store, it's a little higher. You buy it at the ball game, it's even higher. You buy it at a Michelin restaurant, it's even higher, right?
Yeah.
It is the exact same thing. What's
Exactly.
the difference? Well, in this case, the value driver would be either convenience or the experience. So as you get into the higher end realm of let's say, Michelin star restaurants, they're probably going to have very fancy water, but still water. And by the way, it's probably just coming out of the sink in the back. But it's $35, and you'll pay it because it's part of the experience. So you look at the value. In our music shows, we do a couple things. We limit the number of tickets. We space the shows out so that there's a limited supply. We always do our best to deliver a really entertaining show, but we understand that it isn't us and our music that is the whole value prop. It's the entire experience that they have. It's the way we dress. It's the sound quality. It's the venue itself. We play in this amazing old roadhouse down here in Texas, the real thing. And it's an experience. And that's also why our ticket price is much, much higher than the mean average here. And America's most competitive music city. They like to say we're the music capital of the world, but the musicians say we're the tip jar capital of the world. Not if you charge more,
Yes.
people. Get your perception up.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.